Olivia Tran arrived at Gate 27 of Hudson Gateway Airport, her breath ragged from the sprint through Terminal B. Through the enormous glass windows, she could see her flight to Denver still at the gate, passengers settling into their seats. But standing in front of the closed boarding door was Martin Hale, the gate manager, his arms crossed, his stance a perfect blend of corporate protocol and just enough smugness to make Olivia's jaw tighten. "I'm sorry, Miss Tran, but you know the policy. Boarding doors close 15 minutes before departure. No exceptions," Martin said, his tone rehearsed, the voice of someone who enjoyed wielding the shield of company rules. Olivia checked her watch. "It's 14 minutes before departure." "My clock says 15, Martin replied, tapping his wrist dismissively. "And regardless, I've already processed the final count. The door is closed." Around them, the chaotic energy of Hudson Gateway Airport continued uninterrupted. Boarding announcements blared over the intercom. Hurried travelers weaved through the terminal, and the distant hum of luggage carts filled the air. Olivia took a slow, calming breath, forcing back the frustration burning inside her. "I understand policies exist for a reason, but my meeting with the board ran late, and this is the last flight to Denver tonight. I have to be there for tomorrow's opening." Her voice remained steady, calm, professional, the tone she had refined over 15 years in aviation management. Martin's eyes swept over her, taking in her expertly tailored navy suit, pearl earrings, and designer briefcase. Something flickered in his expression. Hesitation, perhaps a moment of recognition, before his stance hardened again. "If your meeting was that important," Martin said coolly, "maybe you should have planned for more buffer time. Next flight to Denver is at 6:15 a.m. Customer service can rebook you." He gestured toward a desk 20 yards away, where an already long line of frustrated travelers stood waiting. Olivia felt the familiar weight settle in her chest, the weight of being underestimated, being judged, being forced to prove herself. She had dealt with men like Martin throughout her career, men who questioned her authority, who saw her Vietnamese-American heritage as a reason to doubt her, who assumed her success was some clerical error waiting to be corrected. "Is there someone else I can speak with?" Olivia asked, keeping her voice level despite the effort it took. Martin's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm the gate manager on duty, Miss Tran. There's no one else to speak with. The decision is final." Olivia nodded slowly, memorizing his name, his face, the smug set of his shoulders. She didn't say what she was really thinking, that by Monday morning, when she walked into Hudson Gateway Airport as the new director of operations for Summit Airways, Martin Hale would be one of her first priorities. Instead, she simply said, "Thank you for your time." She turned away, pulling out her phone and dialing Claire Reynolds, her assistant. "Claire, I assume from your tone that Martin Hale gave you trouble?" Claire's knowing voice came through the line. "How did you guess?" Olivia exhaled, still trying to rein in her frustration. "Because I warned you about him," Claire replied. "Hudson Terminal B is infamous for his nonsense. 3 separate complaints about how he treats female executives in the last quarter alone. But Whitman keeps protecting him." Charles Whitman, the outgoing director of operations, the man Olivia would be replacing. A leader who had built a network of loyalists like Martin, men who reflected his biases, men who had been protected and empowered under his tenure. Olivia's gaze drifted back toward the gate as her flight began pushing back, 14 minutes before its scheduled departure time. "Do you want me to book you the company jet? It's available tonight," Claire asked. Olivia considered it, then shook her head, even though Claire couldn't see her. "No, book me on the 6:15 commercial flight. I'll use tonight to review Terminal B's personnel files again, especially Martin Hale's." Behind her, a family of 4 rushed toward the gate, the parents pulling 2 small children along as they called out to Martin. Olivia paused, watching as his demeanor transformed, his stern professionalism melting into a warm smile. With an easy nod, he reopened the boarding door for them. They had arrived even later than she had, Olivia's jaw tightened. She turned away, heading toward the airline lounge. She had work to do. At the same moment, Martin Hale was denying Olivia Tran boarding at Gate 27. Across the airport in Terminal C, Daniela Morales was staring at a security monitor, her expression unreadable. "Play it again from the beginning," she instructed Jason Patel, the young security technician sitting beside her. The footage replayed on the screen, showing a middle-aged white man placing his laptop in the seat pocket before walking toward the restroom. Minutes later, he returned, glanced around, and suddenly raised the alarm. His laptop was missing. The only person who had been near the row was Mariam Owusu, a Ghanaian woman who had worked for Summit Airways cleaning contractor for 8 years without a single infraction. "He's absolutely sure she took it," Jason muttered. "Says he just knows it was her." Daniela's expression remained neutral, but her fingers drummed once against the desk. "Keep watching." The footage continued, and there it was. The passenger himself removing the laptop from the seat pocket and placing it in his own carry-on in the overhead bin. A fact he had conveniently forgotten when making his accusation. Daniela exhaled slowly. "Send this to HR and legal. I want a formal apology issued to Ms. Owusu, and I want it documented that this passenger made a false accusation." Her voice left no room for debate. "Also, flag his profile in the system. If he ever makes another claim against our staff, I want to know immediately." Jason nodded, visibly relieved. "She was in tears in the break room. And the guy, he was shouting that she should be deported." A familiar anger burned in Daniela's chest, but she kept her voice steady. As one of the few Latina executives in Summit Airways, she knew all too well how quickly assumptions were made about people of color in service positions. "I'll speak with her personally," Daniela said, gathering her files. She turned back to Jason. "And I want you to review our security response protocols. The fact that Ms. Owusu was questioned in public, in front of passengers, is unacceptable. That should never happen again." As Daniela stepped out of the security office, her phone buzzed with a text from Olivia Tran. They had bonded during the executive interview process and had kept in touch ever since. Olivia: "Martin Hale at Gate 27 just denied me boarding. Plane still at the gate. Watching him let a white family board who arrived even later. We need to talk." Daniela's lips pressed into a thin line. Martin Hale. She'd had her own run-ins with him before. His selective enforcement of policies, his strict adherence to rules that somehow never applied the same way to everyone. She quickly typed back, "Daniela, not surprised. His personnel file is illuminating. Hilton at 8? A response came within seconds. Olivia: "Perfect. Bringing files. This place needs an overhaul." Daniela smiled slightly as she slipped her phone back into her pocket. The old guard at Hudson Gateway Airport had no idea what was coming. As Flight 1824 climbed into the evening sky, Captain Ethan Carter adjusted the throttle, his face unreadable. Beside him, First Officer Annika Reddy finished the last of their takeoff procedures, but her mind was still on what had happened at Gate 27. "That was unacceptable," Annika said, breaking the silence. Ethan nodded grimly. "Martin Hale's been pulling stunts like that for years. Did you see the woman he turned away? And then let that family board afterward?" "Hard to miss," Annika said, her voice tight. "I'm filing a report when we land. Not that it'll change anything." Ethan had known Annika for 3 years, ever since she joined Summit Airways after a distinguished Air Force career. She was one of the most skilled, level-headed first officers he had ever worked with. She was also one of the few women of color in the cockpit, and over time, he had come to understand the subtle and not-so-subtle biases she faced daily. As they settled into cruising altitude, Annika spoke again. "You know, in all my years of flying, I've never had another pilot stand up for me the way you have." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. I haven't done anything special, Annika. Just what any decent colleague should do. She gave him a small, knowing smile. That's just it. It should be normal. But it isn't. She adjusted their heading as directed by air traffic control. Do you know how many times I've been mistaken for a flight attendant? How many passengers have concerns about a woman flying their plane? How many times I've had to prove myself in ways my white male colleagues never do? Ethan was silent for a long moment. I can imagine, he finally said, but I know I can't fully understand. No, you can't, Annika agreed, but her tone was gentle. But you listen, and you believe me, which puts you ahead of most. She glanced at him. And you actually do something about it, like in Dallas last month. Ethan frowned at the memory. A ground crew member had made a racist remark about Annika, assuming the cockpit window was closed and no one would hear. Ethan had reported it immediately, refused to let it be dismissed as a joke, and demanded a formal investigation. The new director of operations, Annika said thoughtfully. She's going to face resistance, especially from the old guard. Without a doubt, Ethan replied. But from what I've heard, Olivia Tran isn't someone who backs down from a fight. His thoughts drifted back to the woman at the gate. He hadn't gotten a good look at her, but something about Hale's treatment of her had stuck with him. Maybe, just maybe, with new leadership coming in, it would be the last time he witnessed that kind of behavior. Back on the ground, strategy over dinner. At Hudson Gateway Airport, in the Summit Airways Executive Lounge, Olivia Tran sat across from Daniela Morales, their half-finished dinners pushed aside in favor of the files spread out on the table. Daniela scanned a document. Martin Hale, age 47. Been with the airline for 18 years. 4 formal complaints for inconsistent enforcement of boarding policies in the last year alone, all from women. 3 were women of color. Olivia nodded, unsurprised. And yet, Daniela continued, sliding over another file, his performance reviews from Whitman are glowing. Exemplary adherence to protocol. Strong decision-making skills. Upholds company standards. Olivia took a sip of her water. Whitman and Hale golf together, don't they? Daniela smirked. They do, along with about half the senior ground operations team. The women in the airport call them the Hudson Boys Club. Olivia flipped through another personnel file. What about this one? Stephen Mercer, head of scheduling. His name keeps coming up in staff complaints. Daniela's expression darkened. Mercer's worse than Hale in some ways. He's just more careful about it. Female flight attendants who file complaints mysteriously get assigned the worst routes. Women in management find their meeting invitations lost, or their project deadlines moved up without notice. And yet, she tapped the document, no formal disciplinary action. Whitman protects him too, Olivia murmured. Daniela nodded. They were college roommates. Olivia leaned back in her chair, scanning the growing stack of files before her. This wasn't just about one problematic employee. It was a system, carefully built and maintained by Whitman and his inner circle, a culture that allowed bias to flourish unchecked. Daniela met Olivia's gaze. You know they're going to resist any changes. Because I'm a woman, or because I'm Vietnamese American? Daniela smiled grimly. Both. And because you're an outsider. Whitman's been building his empire here for nearly a decade. His people are deeply entrenched. Olivia's lips curved into a smile, but there was steel behind it. Then they'd better prepare for a storm. Daniela raised an eyebrow. What's the plan? First, I'm launching an immediate audit of all gate management procedures, scheduling practices, and security protocols. I want 6 months of boarding denial data, broken down by passenger demographics. Daniela grinned. Already started. The numbers are illuminating. I'll bet they are. Olivia flipped to another page. And I've scheduled one-on-one meetings with every department head for next week, including our friend, Martin Hale. Daniela smirked. He doesn't know who you are yet, does he? No. Whitman insisted on keeping my appointment a secret until Monday. He wanted to manage the transition in his own way. Olivia's voice was dry. In other words, he wanted time to warn his buddies and set up roadblocks. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then looked up, her expression unreadable. "What is it?" Daniela asked. "Flight 512 to Denver. The 6:15 a.m. I was rebooked on." Olivia set down her phone. "It's been canceled due to crew scheduling issues." Daniela's expression darkened. "That would make you miss the entire first day of the conference. Let me guess. Who's in charge of crew scheduling?" They answered at the same time. "Stephen Mercer." Olivia exhaled sharply. "They really have no idea who they're dealing with, do they?" Daniela grinned. "Apparently not." Olivia picked up her phone again. "Call the company pilot on standby. I'll be taking the corporate jet to Denver after all." She snapped her briefcase shut with a decisive click. "And add Stephen Mercer to my Monday meeting list. First thing, 8 a.m. sharp." "You know they're going to fight you on this," Daniela Morales said, her voice quiet but firm. "Especially coming from you." Olivia Tran leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Because I'm a woman? Or because I'm Vietnamese American?" Daniela gave her a knowing look. "Both. And because you're an outsider. Whitman has spent almost a decade building his inner circle here. His people are entrenched." Olivia's expression was calm, but there was steel behind it. "Then they'd better brace for impact." She slid a document across the table. "Monday morning, I'm launching a full-scale audit of all gate management procedures, scheduling practices, and security protocols. I want a 6-month breakdown of every boarding denial, categorized by passenger demographics." Daniela's lips curved into a small smile. "Already started. The early numbers are interesting." "I'll bet they are," Olivia said. She picked up another folder. "I've also scheduled one-on-one meetings with every department head next week, including Martin Hale." Daniela raised an eyebrow. "He still doesn't know who you are, does he?" Olivia smirked. "No. Whitman insisted on keeping my appointment confidential until Monday. Said he wanted to manage the transition." Her voice turned dry. "Which really meant he wanted to warn his people and set up roadblocks." At that moment, Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the incoming email, her expression shifting into one of disbelief. Daniela noticed immediately. "What is it?" Olivia exhaled sharply. "Flight 512 to Denver. The 6:15 a.m. commercial flight I was rebooked on. Canceled." Daniela's eyes darkened. "That would make you miss the entire first day of the conference. Let me guess. Who's in charge of that crew scheduling decision?" They answered in unison. "Stephen Mercer." Olivia's jaw clenched. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." Daniela smirked. "Apparently not." Without hesitation, Olivia grabbed her phone. "Call the company pilot on standby. I'm taking the corporate jet to Denver tonight after all." She snapped her briefcase shut with a decisive click. "And Mercer? Add him to my Monday meeting list. First thing, 8 a.m. sharp." Daniela watched her with a mix of admiration and concern. "They're going to fight dirty, Olivia. Whitman's people won't let go of their power easily." Olivia didn't hesitate. "Good thing I've never been afraid of a fight." At 2 a.m., in a dimly lit home office, Charles Whitman swirled his glass of scotch, his laptop glowing in front of him. His retirement should have felt like a victory lap. 27 years with Summit Airways, the last 9 as Director of Operations at Hudson Gateway Airport. Instead, an uneasy feeling crept in. The board had overruled his recommendation to have Stephen Mercer take over his position. Instead, they'd insisted on new perspectives, corporate code for We don't want another 50-year-old white man running the show. And now, Olivia Tran was arriving Monday with a reputation for cleaning house. His phone rang. Stephen Mercer. At this hour, it could only mean trouble. Whitman sighed and picked up. Tom, it's late. She took the corporate jet, Mercer said, skipping any pleasantries. Whitman sat up straighter. What? I had you cancel her commercial flight. Mercer sounded tense. She has friends already, Charles. Someone in operations approved the jet. She landed in Denver an hour ago. Whitman cursed under his breath. He had hoped the flight cancellation would force Olivia to miss the conference, weakening her standing with the board before she even officially started. That's not all, Mercer continued. She's requested a full year of scheduling data, boarding denial demographics, and she set up back-to-back department head meetings for Monday, including me. First thing, 8 a.m. Whitman set his glass down hard, spilling expensive scotch onto his desk. She moves fast, he muttered. Who's feeding her information? My guess? Mercer's voice lowered. Daniela Morales in security. They were spotted having dinner at the Hilton. Whitman closed his eyes. Morales. She had been a thorn in his side for years, too competent to fire, too principled to manipulate. Keep an eye on that relationship, Whitman ordered. And what about Martin Hale? I heard there was an incident at his gate yesterday. Mercer hesitated. That's the other thing, Charles. The woman Hale turned away at gate 27? Whitman's stomach tightened. What about her? Mercer's voice dropped to a whisper. It was Olivia Tran. Whitman went very still. Damn it, Martin. He had just handed her ammunition. Whitman stared at the dark screen of his laptop, gears turning. This wasn't over. Not yet. Call everyone in, he said coldly. Emergency meeting, tomorrow. My house, noon. He ended the call, then opened his desk drawer, pulling out a folder labeled Contingency Planning. Inside were documents he had compiled over the years, dirt on board members, leverage over key employees, and fallback plans if his position was ever threatened. He wasn't about to let some outsider dismantle everything he had built. What he didn't notice was the small red light blinking on his home security system, a light indicating that someone with the right technical skills was watching, recording, documenting. Someone like Jason Patel, the young security technician who reported to Daniela Morales, who had long suspected Whitman of unethical behavior, and who now had the evidence to prove it. Sunday morning, Whitman's home. The air inside Charles Whitman's home office was thick with tension. His inner circle, department heads, senior managers, and loyalists, sat around the long dining table, exchanging uneasy glances. At the head of the table, Stephen Mercer, head of scheduling, stirred his coffee in slow circles, his face tight with frustration. We have a problem. Martin Hale, sitting stiffly in his chair, frowned. I don't see why this is such a big deal. I followed policy. The woman was late. I've denied plenty of people for that before. Mercer let out a dry laugh. Yes, Martin. And those people weren't Olivia Tran, our new boss. Hale's face lost color. She was the woman at my gate? Whitman's jaw tightened. Yes. Hale sank lower into his chair, rubbing his temple. Damn it! David Calloway, who ran operations for Terminal C, exhaled sharply. Let's not pretend we don't know why this is a problem. You denied a woman of color in a tailored suit, but made an exception for a white family that showed up even later. And now she's running the show. A murmur spread through the group, some defensive, others clearly concerned. Whitman cut through the noise. Listen carefully. The board is making a play here. They want to modernize operations, which in corporate language means dismantling the systems we built, the ones that work. Mercer nodded. Exactly. They've given Tran full backing. If we don't control this situation, she'll bulldoze through everything we've spent years putting in place. Whitman leaned forward, lowering his voice. That's why we need to present a united front. I've prepared talking points for your meetings with her. Stick to them. Emphasize efficiency, customer satisfaction metrics, operational stability. Hale shifted uncomfortably. And what about the data she requested? The demographic breakdown of boarding denials. That's going to make us look bad. Mercer smirked. That data is currently experiencing technical difficulties. I won't be able to process the request for at least 2 weeks. By then, we'll have a better sense of how she operates. Whitman nodded. We're not saying no to her changes. We're saying they're impractical, expensive, too disruptive. We slow her down. Every policy she tries to implement should come with unforeseen complications. A backlog of paperwork, scheduling conflicts, small, untraceable obstacles, enough to frustrate her without outright resistance. And if she pushes forward anyway? Hale asked, still visibly rattled. Whitman's expression darkened. Then we make sure those changes fail. Silence settled over the room. Finally, Calloway spoke. I assume you've thought of a contingency plan? Whitman's lips pressed together. I always have contingencies. Wenonson. Across the country, Olivia Tran sat in her hotel room, laptop open, eyes locked on the live security feed from inside Whitman's house. On the screen, she watched as Whitman handed out strategy documents to his inner circle. Beside her, Daniela Morales scrolled through a transcript of the conversation, shaking her head. They're organized, Daniela muttered. Not just resisting change. They're actively planning to sabotage you. Jason Patel, the young security technician who had been quietly collecting information for months, leaned forward. This is more than just old-school resistance. They're manipulating data, blocking access to critical information, deliberately undermining policies. Olivia's jaw tightened. Keep recording. Make sure our legal team has copies of everything. Daniela met Olivia's gaze. This changes things. Olivia exhaled slowly. No, it just accelerates the timeline. As Summit Airways employees went about their usual routines, news of Olivia Tran's arrival was already spreading. Ethan Carter, one of Summit's senior pilots, leaned against a counter in the crew lounge, speaking in hushed tones, with First Officer Annika ready. I heard her flight got canceled, Annika said. Ethan smirked. She took the corporate jet instead. Annika raised an eyebrow. So they're already trying to mess with her? Looks that way. Ethan took a sip of coffee. Whitman's people aren't going to make this easy. But from what I've heard, Olivia Tran doesn't back down. Annika nodded thoughtfully. Good, because this airport needs a shakeup. Ethan studied her. You think she can do it? Annika didn't hesitate. I think she's already started. With her team assembled over video conference, Olivia laid out her plan. Tomorrow morning, Whitman and Mercer will realize that I already have the data they're trying to hide. They'll realize that I'm aware of their meetings, and they'll realize that their delay tactics won't work. Daniela smirked. And how do you think they'll react? Olivia leaned forward, her voice steady. With more resistance. That's why we're hitting them hard first thing in the morning. My first meeting is with Mercer at 8 a.m. He's not walking out of that room with his job intact. Jason Patel nodded. And Whitman? Olivia's smile was razor sharp. Let's just say his early retirement is about to come a little earlier than expected. Daniela chuckled. I almost feel bad for them. Olivia arched an eyebrow. Don't. They've spent years protecting a system designed to exclude and discriminate. They're not the victims here. A beat of silence passed before Jason spoke again. And what about Hale? Olivia considered this. He's different. He enforces unfair rules, but he's not the architect of them. There might be a way to make him useful. Daniela smirked. Poetic justice? Olivia nodded. Exactly. She closed her laptop, taking a deep breath. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. Inside Charles Whitman's home office, the conversation had shifted from calculated strategy to outright conspiracy. "We'll create just enough friction," Whitman said flatly, pacing behind his desk. "A few scheduling mix-ups, IT issues, minor paperwork delays. Nothing overt, just enough to make her policies look unworkable." Around the room, heads nodded in agreement, except for one. Ryan Adler, the youngest at the table and head of customer analytics, looked visibly uneasy. He hesitated, then cleared his throat. What if her ideas actually work? The room fell silent. Whitman slowly turned toward him. "Ryan, your loyalty seems uncertain." Ryan sat up straighter. "My loyalty is to Summit Airways. I've worked here for 11 years. I want this company to succeed." He exhaled sharply. "And I've reviewed the data from Denver. Complaint rates dropped by 43%. On-time departures improved by 28%. Staff turnover was cut in half." Stephen Mercer let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Oh, please. Those numbers are cooked. Anyone can manipulate statistics to make themselves look good." Ryan didn't back down. "I run the analytics department, Stephen. Those numbers aren't cooked. They were verified by independent auditors." The tension in the room thickened. Whitman stepped in smoothly. "Ryan, I appreciate your perspective, and no one is saying we don't hear her out." His voice was calm, controlled. "We're simply preparing for the likelihood that her priorities don't align with the reality of what works at Hudson Gateway." Ryan didn't look convinced, but he stayed quiet, pretending to study the strategy documents in front of him. None of them realized that their secure discussion was being broadcast in real time, straight to a hotel room in Denver. Poem. Olivia Tran leaned forward, watching the live feed of Whitman's secret meeting on her laptop. Across from her, Daniela Morales and Jason Patel listened in, their expressions unreadable. The transcript scrolled across the screen. "We slow her down, create obstacles, make sure her changes don't stick." Olivia's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. "They're not just resisting, they're planning full-scale sabotage." Jason tapped a few keys, recording everything. "This is exactly what we needed. Proof." Daniela smirked. "They really think they can outmaneuver you?" Olivia exhaled slowly. "They're about to find out otherwise." As Olivia Tran settled into first class, she glanced over at the woman beside her, Monica Caldwell, Summit Airways General Counsel, who had flown in to meet her after reviewing the evidence. Monica, a formidable black woman in her 50s, scrolled through transcripts on her tablet, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "This is remarkably blatant." "It's a textbook hostile work environment," Olivia agreed, keeping her voice low despite the hum of conversation around them. Monica glanced at her. "You realize that when the board chose you, there were whispers." Olivia smirked knowingly. "That I was a diversity hire?" Monica nodded. "That you wouldn't have the backbone to take on Hudson Gateway's entrenched problems." Olivia met her gaze. "Those whispers follow every woman of color in leadership." Monica gave a small smile. "Yes, they do. But after tomorrow," she closed her tablet with a decisive snap, "they'll stop." She turned to Olivia, voice lower. "The board has reviewed the evidence. They're fully behind you. Whitman's early retirement? Effective immediately. Mercer? Placed on administrative leave pending investigation." Olivia's expression remained unreadable, but her grip on her stylus tightened slightly. "And Hale?" Monica raised an eyebrow. "Not immediate termination." A glint of determination flickered in Olivia's eyes. "No, not yet. I have something else in mind." Monica studied her for a moment, then leaned in. "I'm listening." Olivia tapped on her tablet, bringing up a new document. "First, Hale undergoes comprehensive retraining." Monica's eyebrow arched. And? Then, he becomes personally responsible for implementing our new boarding fairness protocols. Olivia's smile was razor sharp. Weekly demographic audits, reports sent directly to me. Monica chuckled, catching on. Poetic justice. Exactly. Olivia closed her tablet. Let's see how he performs when fairness is non-negotiable. As the flight continued toward Hudson Gateway, Olivia leaned back in her seat, eyes scanning the darkened sky through the window. Tomorrow, everything would change. Sunday night, inbound flight to Hudson Gateway. As Olivia Tran's flight taxied to the runway, she turned to Monica Caldwell, who was reviewing final reports on her tablet. Hale's performance metrics will be tied directly to equity and fairness statistics, Olivia explained. Rehabilitation rather than punishment. Monica raised an eyebrow. An interesting approach. Olivia nodded. Some people, like Mercer, are too deeply entrenched to change. But Hale? He enforces unfair policies, but he doesn't create them. If we make him the face of accountability, we turn a liability into an asset. Monica considered this, then smiled. That's smart. Transforming him transforms passenger experience at a key touchpoint. The flight attendant approached with pre-takeoff beverages, and they paused their conversation. Once she moved on, Monica continued. And what about the others from Whitman's meeting? Case-by-case evaluation, Olivia said. Ryan Adler showed integrity. He'll be valuable in the transition. David Calloway has a problematic record, but his team respects him. If he's willing to adapt, there might be a place for him. Monica nodded approvingly. Surgical rather than scorched earth. The board will appreciate that. Olivia's expression hardened slightly. This isn't about revenge. It's about creating an airline where everyone, employees and passengers alike, is treated with fairness, where policies are applied consistently, no matter someone's race, gender, or status, where excellence is the standard, not favoritism. Outside the window, the darkening sky stretched endlessly ahead. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of sweeping changes at Hudson Gateway Airport, changes that wouldn't just affect Summit Airways, but potentially the entire industry. She was ready for the challenge, for the resistance, for the difficult conversations ahead. But first, she had a particularly satisfying meeting scheduled. The airport buzzed with its usual chaos. Thousands of passengers streaming through security, gate announcements echoing across terminals, flights arriving and departing in a carefully choreographed dance. But inside the Summit Airways administrative offices, a different energy hung in the air. At precisely 7:30 a.m., Olivia Tran strode through the executive entrance, her tailored crimson suit making sure she wouldn't be overlooked or forgotten. Daniela Morales was already waiting in the lobby, standing beside Monica Caldwell and two board members who had flown in for the occasion. Everything's ready, Daniela confirmed. The all-hands email went out at 7 a.m., announcing Whitman's immediate retirement and your appointment. Mercer was formally placed on administrative leave 10 minutes ago. Olivia checked her watch. And Hale? Daniela smirked. He should be arriving at the executive conference room right about now. Still thinking he's meeting with Whitman. A calm, unshakable determination settled over Olivia. Good. And the others from yesterday's meeting? Scheduled for individual meetings throughout the day, Daniela replied. None of them know about the surveillance or that we recorded their planning session. Just then, Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and smiled. Ethan Carter and Annika Reddy had requested a brief meeting before their flight that afternoon. Daniela raised an eyebrow. The pilot and first officer from your canceled flight. Yes, Olivia said, pocketing her phone. They've both filed multiple reports about discrimination at Hudson Gateway over the years. Good allies to have. I'll schedule them for 2 p.m., Daniela said. Olivia gave a slight nod. Now let's not keep Mr. Hale waiting. R. Inside the executive conference room, the atmosphere shifted the moment Olivia stepped in. Martin Hale, still expecting Whitman, stood abruptly. The moment his eyes locked onto Olivia, recognition flashed across his face. His expression shifted from confusion to dread. Olivia smiled pleasantly. "Good morning, Mr. Hale." She pulled out a chair and sat at the head of the table. "I believe we've met before, though we weren't properly introduced." She let the silence stretch for a beat. "I'm Olivia Tran, Summit Airways' new Director of Operations." Hale's face drained of color as realization set in. The woman he had dismissed at Gate 27, the one he had refused to board, now his boss. "Miss Tran, Hale stammered. Olivia raised a hand, cutting him off smoothly. "Please, have a seat." He swallowed hard and obeyed. Olivia placed a file in front of her. "We have much to discuss." Executive Conference Room, Monday morning. For the next 30 minutes, Olivia Tran systematically laid out the discrepancies in Martin Hale's boarding denials over the past 6 months. "The numbers speak for themselves, Mr. Hale," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. Passengers of color, particularly women, were 3 times more likely to be denied boarding for late arrival than white passengers, even when arriving at the same time before departure. Hale, visibly sweating, shifted in his chair. "These are just numbers," he stammered. "They don't show the specific circumstances of each situation." "Let's talk about those circumstances," Olivia interrupted smoothly, flipping to another report. "White families with children received boarding exceptions 97% of the time when arriving late. Families of color with children? Only 34%. She fixed him with a sharp gaze. "How do you explain that disparity?" Hale opened his mouth, but no words came. "I thought not." Olivia slid a folder across the table toward him. "Now, typically, a pattern like this would result in immediate termination." Hale's hands clenched on the table. "However," Olivia continued, "I'm offering you an alternative path." Inside the folder was a detailed performance improvement plan, along with his new job description. "You will be personally responsible for implementing and monitoring our new equitable boarding initiative. Every week you'll report diversity metrics to me directly. Your compensation will be tied to measurable improvements in fair treatment." Hale's face was a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You want me to be responsible for diversity?" Olivia allowed herself a small smile. "Poetic, isn't it? Who better to champion change than someone intimately familiar with the problem?" She leaned back. "You have until noon to decide. Either you resign, or you take this opportunity to be part of the solution." Hale sat frozen, his mind racing. "I suggest you use the time to reflect on which path offers you a better future," Olivia finished. As he stood and walked out, visibly shaken, Daniela Morales leaned toward Olivia. "You think he'll stay?" Olivia folded her hands on the table. "Self-preservation is a powerful motivator. He has a mortgage, 2 kids in college, and 18 years with the airline. Starting over at his age won't be appealing." Daniela nodded. "And if he does stay, can he really change?" Olivia's expression softened slightly. "People can surprise you, Daniela. Sometimes they just need the right incentive. And if he can't or won't change?" She closed the folder. "Well, his failure will be documented and actionable, unlike the protected behavior of the past." Olivia spent the day conducting back-to-back meetings with department heads and senior managers. Some, like Ryan Adler, came prepared with ideas and data, eager to collaborate. Others arrived defensive, clutching the talking points Whitman had distributed, only to find themselves confronted with transcripts of the very meeting where those points had been crafted. By mid-afternoon, the news of the leadership shakeup had spread. By the time Ethan Carter and Annika Reddy arrived for their scheduled meeting, word had traveled fast through the airport. They came prepared, not just with their own observations, but with testimonials from flight attendants, ground crew, and other pilots who had witnessed or experienced discrimination at Hudson Gateway. "What you're doing is long overdue," Ethan told Olivia as they wrapped up. Summit Airways has always prided itself on being an industry leader in technology and customer service. It's time we led on equality, too. Annika nodded. "The culture won't change overnight. There will be resistance, backlash even. But you already have allies. People who have been waiting for this moment, though many were afraid to speak up until now." Olivia met their gaze. "That's why transparency will be central to our approach moving forward." She ticked off each point on her fingers. No more hidden decision-making. No more selective enforcement. No more protection for those who discriminate. She leaned forward. "And I'll need people like you, people with credibility and respect across departments, to help shepherd that change." Ethan and Annika exchanged a glance. Then Ethan grinned. "You've got us." "Hen? Mine." As Olivia wrapped up her final meeting of the day, Daniela entered the office, a satisfied expression on her face. "Hale accepted the performance improvement plan," she reported. "Training starts tomorrow." Olivia nodded. "Good." Daniela's smirk grew. "And since this morning's leadership announcement, HR has received 17 new reports of discrimination. People coming forward who had been too afraid to file complaints before." Olivia exhaled. "That's progress." Daniela pulled out another document. "One more thing. The family the Hale let board after denying you? The father wrote an apology letter." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Really?" Daniela nodded. "He overheard what happened, realized the double standard, but didn't speak up at the time. He's offered to provide a statement for our training materials on being an active ally against discrimination." Olivia considered for a moment. Then she gave a firm nod. "Accept his offer. Change requires everyone's participation, not just those who've been marginalized." As Daniela left, Olivia turned to the large windows overlooking the airport, watching as planes took off into the fading sunlight. Change had begun, but there was still more to do. Monday evening, Olivia's office. As the final meetings of the day concluded, Olivia Tran stood at the large window of her office, watching aircraft take off and land against the backdrop of the evening sky. Hudson Gateway Airport, a complex ecosystem of people, technology, protocols, and power dynamics, was now her responsibility. Transforming its culture wouldn't be quick or easy, but the first steps had been taken. Behind her, Daniela Morales leaned against the door frame, holding a final update for the day. Hale accepted the performance improvement plan. Training starts tomorrow. Olivia nodded, unsurprised. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator. Daniela smirked. And since this morning's leadership announcement, HR has received 17 new reports of past discrimination. People feel safe coming forward now. That's progress. Olivia turned from the window, folding her arms. What else? Daniela hesitated, then smiled slightly. The family Hale let board after denying you? The father sent a letter of apology. Apparently, he overheard what happened, felt uncomfortable about the double standard, but didn't speak up in the moment. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Interesting. He's offered to provide a statement for our training materials on being an active ally against discrimination. Olivia considered this, then gave a decisive nod. Accept his offer. Change requires everyone's participation, not just those who have been marginalized. Just then, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from Claire Reynolds. CNN Business requesting interview about leadership changes and your vision for Summit. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Olivia smiled to herself. The story was getting out. Not just the story of one woman denied boarding who turned out to be the new boss, but the larger story of systematic change, of accountability, of creating an environment where everyone was treated with fairness and respect. She typed back, "Confirm the interview, and book Martin Hale to join me. It's time he started his new role as our diversity champion." The atmosphere inside Summit Airways had shifted noticeably. The executive offices, once dominated by Whitman's inner circle, now reflected a more diverse leadership team. Meetings included voices that had previously been marginalized or excluded entirely. And at Gate 27, where Olivia's journey had begun, Martin Hale stood before a group of new gate agents conducting a training session. "The most important thing to remember," Hale was saying, "is consistency in policy application. Every passenger deserves the same consideration, regardless of appearance, accent, or any other factor." From a discreet distance, Olivia watched. It was a remarkable transformation. Hale wasn't just complying with his performance improvement plan. He had embraced it. Perhaps it was the diversity training. Perhaps it was the public accountability. Or perhaps it was simply that, for the first time, his biases had been so plainly exposed that denial was no longer an option. "Quite the turnaround," came a voice beside her. Olivia turned to see Daniela Morales, watching the session with mild amusement. Olivia nodded. "He still has moments of backsliding. Old habits die hard. But the weekly metrics don't lie. Boarding denials are down overall, and the racial and gender disparities nearly gone." Daniela smirked. "And passenger satisfaction scores are up. Turns out treating people fairly is good for business." Who knew? They shared a knowing smile as they turned away, walking through the terminal toward their next meeting. "The board is impressed," Daniela continued. "Quarterly results are exceeding projections. Employee retention is improving. And the media coverage of our diversity initiatives has generated positive buzz for the airline." Olivia's smile faded slightly. "It's not all smooth sailing. We still have pockets of resistance." Daniela sighed. "Yeah, the lawsuit from Mercer claiming wrongful termination, and the anonymous complaints about reverse discrimination and lowered standards." Olivia exhaled. "True. But we have facts on our side. Mercer's case won't hold up against the evidence we have, and the performance metrics speak for themselves." Daniela nodded. "At the end of the day, people don't resist fairness. They resist losing their unfair advantages." Olivia glanced back toward Gate 27, watching as Hale gestured toward a boarding checklist, reinforcing the new protocols. Some people could change. Others? She had no doubt they'd fight until the bitter end. But she wasn't going anywhere. Hudson Gateway Airport was no longer the same place Olivia Tran had walked into just 8 weeks ago. The changes were visible in every terminal, every gate, and every department, not just in policy, but in culture. As Olivia and Daniela Morales walked through Terminal C, discussing the latest operational performance metrics, they reflected on the remarkable transformation. "You know what still amazes me," Olivia said? "How quickly most people adapted once expectations were clear and consistently enforced." Daniela nodded thoughtfully. "It suggests that a lot of people always knew the old system was unfair. They just didn't have the incentive or the courage to challenge it." "Systems persist because enough people benefit from them," Olivia said. "Or because they feel powerless to change them. We change the equation on both counts." They approached a conference room where Annika Reddy and Ethan Carter were leading a session for a group of high school students, participants in Summit Airways' Future in Flight program, designed to introduce young people, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, to careers in aviation. A young woman spotted Olivia through the glass wall and lit up with recognition. "Ms. Tran, I read about you in Aviation Week." Is it true you weren't allowed on a flight and then became the boss of the whole airport?" Olivia laughed. "That's simplifying things a bit, but yes, there's some truth to that story." The student grinned. "That's so cool." Another student raised a hand eagerly. "Did you fire that gate agent?" Olivia's expression grew more serious. "No, I gave him the opportunity to learn and change, and he took it." The students looked intrigued, expecting a different answer. Olivia continued, "Sometimes the most powerful transformation doesn't come from removing people. It comes from helping them see differently." The students absorbed the lesson, one that was less dramatic, but more meaningful. Across the room, Annika Reddy caught Olivia's eye, nodding in quiet appreciation. They both understood that true leadership wasn't just about wielding power. It was about creating systems where everyone had the chance to contribute their best. The conference room door swung open, and Ryan Adler stepped out, tablet in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you'd want to see this right away." He handed Olivia the latest customer satisfaction scores, directly reflecting the revised boarding procedures she had implemented. They were at an all-time high. Olivia studied the numbers with quiet satisfaction. "Send these to Martin Hale immediately," she said. "His team deserves to know that their work is making a difference." As the group filed into the conference room, Olivia paused in the doorway, taking in the scene, the eager students, the engaged employees, the sense of purpose that now permeated Summit Airways' operations. Many had predicted she wouldn't last 6 months against the entrenched resistance. Yet here they were, 2 months in, with tangible progress and momentum building daily. There would still be challenges ahead. Institutional change was never linear or complete. But as Olivia watched Annika demonstrating a flight simulator to a young woman whose eyes shone with possibility, she knew they were on the right path. Not just for Summit Airways, but for an industry that had too often lagged behind in creating truly inclusive environments. As Olivia left the meeting, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Martin Hale. "Just received the satisfaction scores. Team is celebrating. Thank you for the second chance. I won't let you down." Olivia smiled to herself as she tucked the phone away and stepped back into the flow of the airport. Sometimes, the most satisfying victories weren't about revenge or punishment. They were about creating the space for people to become better versions of themselves, and in doing so, building something stronger than what had existed before. Outside the large windows of the terminal, aircraft continued their choreographed dance of takeoffs and landings against the New York skyline. Each flight carried hundreds of passengers who would now experience a Hudson Gateway airport that was slowly but surely becoming what it always should have been. A place where everyone was treated with equal respect, where policies were applied consistently, and where the only standard that mattered was excellence. It had all begun with a denied boarding, a closed gate, a moment of discrimination that could have gone unnoticed, like countless others before it. But instead, it had become the catalyst for transformation. Proof that sometimes the wrong person to turn away is exactly the right person to lead the way forward. The end.